A woman stands at a counter in Ohio, spooning cereal into her mouth while scrolling a phone with her other hand. She doesn't taste it. She isn't meant to. In 11 minutes, she will be in her car, and in 19 more, at a desk. This is breakfast. It has a name, a shape, a slot on the clock, and she has never once questioned why it exists at exactly this hour, in exactly this form. She assumes it is ancient. She assumes somewhere in her body that humans have always eaten this way, 3 times, spaced evenly, like a heartbeat. They have not. Long before clocks divided the day into equal parts, humans ate when there was food, and did not eat when there wasn't. Hunter-gatherer groups moved with seasons, not schedules. Meals arrived in clusters. A large kill shared over days, then nothing. Then something small and quick, eaten standing, eaten walking. There was no dinner bell. There was no idea that eating 3 times was correct, healthy, or civilized. Eating was a response to hunger, not an appointment. Even in early colonial America, meals were messy affairs, rustic, often eaten hastily, without utensils, and standing up. There was no ritual. There was no table set with the moral weight it carries now. But here's what's strange. Somewhere between that disorder and this morning's cereal bowl, eating became architecture, fixed, timed, almost sacred, and almost no one asked who built it. In 2013, a food historian published a study that traced exactly how this happened. Her conclusion was blunt. The 3-meal structure is not biology. It is history, and fairly recent history at that. The greatest transformations of American mealtimes followed the Industrial Revolution's regularizing of the workday, kitchen mechanization, and the rise of industrial food processing. Before factories, the midday meal had been the largest of the day. Farmers came in from the fields, sat, ate heavily, rested, went back out. But factories don't pause for rest. The evening meal became the day's most important, since workers lacked time to return home in the middle of the day. Lunch, as we now understand it, quick, cold, forgettable, was not a tradition. It was an accommodation. Lunch was invented, not discovered, not handed down, built like a machine part to fit a machine that didn't exist a century before. There is an older story buried underneath this one, and it is stranger still. The Romans, a civilization capable of aqueducts, roads, and law that still shapes courts today, were obsessed with digestion, and eating more than 1 meal was considered a form of gluttony. A single meal a day. Anything more was excess, a moral failing, a mark of weakness. For centuries, that belief held more cultural power than anything a modern nutritionist could tell you. So which is correct? 1 meal, out of discipline, 3, out of convenience, 6, out of modern advice? No culture that built these rules did so by studying the human body. They did it by studying the shape of their own labor, their own morality, their own fear of appearing uncivilized. And there it is on the same word, uncivilized, reappearing in a different century, aimed at a different people. When European settlers encountered Native American communities, they observed something that unsettled them. Natives dined based on seasonal availability, sometimes even fasting, with no fixed hours, no ritual sitting. The eating schedule of the native tribes was less rigid, and the Europeans took this as evidence that natives were uncivilized. Civilized people ate properly and boundaried their eating, differentiating themselves from the animal kingdom, where grazing is the norm. 3 meals a day was never a nutritional finding. It was a boundary line, a way one group of humans drew itself apart from another, using nothing but timing. This is not a small thing. An entire mythology of health was constructed in part to prove a point about who counted as human. By the time cereal companies and juice manufacturers entered the 20th century, a new machine had taken over the machine of the factory, marketing. Breakfast is considered the most important meal of the day, largely due to advertising campaigns by cereal and juice companies. Not because science demanded it. A quirk of history has meant this pattern has been heralded as healthy, when in fact there is no evidence for this assertion. Somewhere, a slogan became a belief. A belief became a habit passed through generations. And a habit, held long enough, starts to feel like instinct, like something written into the blueprint of the body, rather than sold to it. You have probably felt hungry at noon, not because your body demanded food, but because the clock told you it was time to be hungry. If history built the 3-meal day, Biology has spent the last several decades quietly disagreeing with it. At the Salk Institute in California, a researcher began studying what happens when the timing of eating, not the content of it, is changed. In a landmark 2012 study, his lab found that mice fed the exact same high-fat, high-sugar diet, but restricted to an 8 to 12-hour window each day, maintained their weight and had healthy blood sugar and cholesterol levels, while mice eating the identical diet across a longer window showed signs of poor metabolic health. Same food, same calories, different clock, different outcome. Later work from his lab pushed the number further. Mice given a strict 12-hour eating window versus free access carried 70% less fat and 28% less total body mass, a difference driven entirely by timing. By 2023, this had moved from mice to people. A clinical study out of UC San Diego tested a 10-hour eating window in patients already living with cardiometabolic disease. The result was that combining time-restricted eating with medication gave metabolic syndrome patients a better ability to manage their disease. None of this proves 3 meals are wrong, but none of it proves they're right either. What it proves is something quieter and heavier. The human body does not care what a meal is called. It cares when light enters the eye, when the liver expects fuel, when the gut expects rest. Liver glycogen begins to deplete at 10 hours, and the body begins shifting toward fat metabolism and ketone production, a rhythm that has nothing to do with breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and everything to do with a clock far older than any of those words. Here is where it gets worse. Nearly all of modern life, the 8-hour workday, the school bell, the 3-meal grid, was assembled by people solving problems that no longer exist. The factory whistle that created lunch is largely gone. The farm labor that justified a heavy midday meal is gone for most of us. And yet the structure remains, inherited like a piece of furniture nobody remembers buying, still sitting in the same spot because moving it would take more effort than living around it. We are eating according to a 19th century solution to a 19th century problem, and calling it nature. Somewhere in that Ohio kitchen, or one just like it, the woman finishes her cereal. She does not know about Rome's disdain for a second meal. She does not know that lunch, the meal she'll eat in a car in 4 hours, was built to solve a factory's scheduling problem 150 years ago. She does not know that her hunger at noon may be a memory of habit more than a signal of the body. She simply eats because it is time, because it has always been time, because everyone she has ever known has eaten this way. There is no evidence any of it was designed for her. There is only evidence that it was designed by Puritans differentiating themselves from people they didn't understand, by factories that needed workers fed and moving, by companies that needed something to sell at 7 a.m. Somewhere underneath all of that, a body is still running on an older rhythm. One older than Rome, older than the assembly line, older than the word breakfast itself. It doesn't know about clocks. It only knows light and dark, hunger, and rest. And every day, 3 times a day, we override it without noticing, and call it simply eating.